time to cater to people who think they know more than I do. Yep, that's it. I love you anyway, but, you know, sometimes you just don't know more than I do. Everybody's talking about lateral torque and side loading and stuff like that. This is a fucking hay wagon. You don't ram shit from the sides. You just don't. You put hay on top of it. The beam carries the weight. The weight is transferred to the wheels, front and back. This right here is a gargantuan pivot. There's no side loading. When I go across the ditch, look what happens. It travels back and forth. Therefore, there's no lateral torque. None. See that? And it moves. It does have a shock absorber, which is nice. But it moves quite gently from side to side. That's why I can have it bolted at 4 points. Now, the truss, or the weight, that is transferred to that 5/16 inch thick chunk of steel, which is, I'm going to say it's 6 by 10, no, 6 by 12, 6 inches wide, 12 inches tall, 5/16 inch thick. There's not going to be any torque there. When a wheel dips, even if there was torque, even if there was some torque there, it's not going to break that. The thing lasted for 18 years with really inferior welds. The butt splices, these are just straight pieces of steel that I torched off at that end. No, actually I didn't torch it off at that end. This is a full-length piece of steel, that's a full-length piece of steel, and that's a half, and I cut that, I forget what I cut that with. Well, whatever I cut it with, it didn't matter. It was the weld. Yeah, I think I cut that with a torch. I did. I split it in half with a torch. You can see, because the angles here were a little sloppy, which I'm going to be re-welding my bumper to in a little bit. So as far as lateral torque, side loading, and other things like that, I'm not going to break that. I mean, if I break that in the next 18 to 20 years, if I'm even in business that long, I may just take the fuck it all pill, sell everything, and go to become a developer of land or something like that, because that's the only thing that would piss people off more than me making these welds. You know, that's what I do. But anyway, yeah, so I don't know, you guys are all a bunch of armchair structural engineers, and that's okay. I take your opinions like I take my morning pills. I don't take morning pills, so I guess I'm not even going to take your opinion, because that will work. I've plated it, double plated it. There is now 5/16 worth of steel on the bottom web. There is, in this, because I laid that patch in there. Actually, I laid a 1/2 inch piece of steel in there. I ground down 100%, built a weld right straight up, butt spliced that, added a 1/4 inch plate on either side, so there's a 1/2 inch plus 5/16 of an inch, plus there's another 1/2 inch on top of that, plus the welds, and I've expanded it, and a foot on either direction of the center splice. So I don't think there's really going to be too much problems. If it does break through, it will break through right here in the same exact spot, and a diamond shaped little doodad is not going to give me any more strength in the center of that weld than this, say, flat piece of steel. I don't have problems with the welds breaking on this. I won't have problems with the welds breaking on this. I just won't. It'll be the steel that breaks, not the welds. And if you're going to tell me something different, just please keep your comments to yourself, because it isn't going to work out for you. Anyway, enough catering to people that annoy me today. Now I'm dealing with this. Okay, so you're looking at this and you're probably thinking, oh, he's fucking that up too. But no, I'm not. What I'm doing is I have welded across the top. I'm going to grind these welds off again, and I'm going to do the exact same thing there that I did here, because all this thing does is holds, it's a pulling point to the rear wheels. So I've got the top welded. No, I'm not filling that in. I'm going to put a jack underneath there. I'm going to close that gap up, and then I'm going to weld it and that will be repaired. And the same there. Then I'm going to grind this paint off of here, and I'm going to put my batches in, or my braces. I do have some porosity here. Had a little too much anti-splatter on the tip of the nozzle, and it caused that. So when I grind it off, I'm probably going to lay over it again with another. I don't even have to, because that porosity is just a mute subject once I plate it. This is what it should look like right there. I started and then I had to, then I stopped and went again. But yeah, I'm going to get the jack under there and you can watch me do that in high speed so everybody can see that I weld faster than I normally do. Right, Tim? Okay, so now I'm going to jack this up. I've welded across the top, obviously, like I said, and now I'm tightening that up, and I'm about to smack it with a hammer to settle the steel into one another so it's nice and tight before I go ahead and weld. And as you see, I'm welding. It looks like the arc is pulsating. Well, it is pulsating. Sometimes, well, I wanted maximum penetration with the welder, and sometimes you set the welder onto stitch mode, and what that'll do is it'll pulsate. It'll, put a bead out, then stop. Put some wire out, then stop. Put some wire out and stop. And I did that because I just really felt that it would do a better job. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, but I'm sure somewhere someone will tell me that I'm wrong. But it's okay because, everybody's a critic and I can handle the criticism. It's fine, But anyway, here's what's actually going on here. These stringers, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to explain this a little later in the video, but the stringers do not hold any weight, none whatsoever. And I know there was a lot of guys there's like, oh, you need to couple the wagon to the stringers so that it's strong and it will never break. Well, stringers are not designed to carry any weight. What they're designed to do is to transfer the power of the tractor through the tongue, through the stringers to the rear wheels. So when you're pulling all four wheels at the same time. If the stringers weren't there, you would really just tear the front wheels out from under this wagon when you got into mud or something like that. Because if the ass end of this wagon were to sink, and all that power from, say, a 250 or even possibly the 8530 at a maximum of 360 horsepower pulling on this thing, it would tear the front end out from under it if the ass end was stuck in the mud. So that's what the stringers do. So if you're stuck in the mud and rear wheels are sunk down, you're actually pulling from the rear wheels. That's just the way it is. It's not like it's a semi-trailer where you're pulling from the kingpin and then the frame takes the load and you're pulling the rear wheels. Well, actually, I guess it is, but kind of not. The wagon body itself it's not free floating, but it's bolted to the gear, and that gear, and it's very important that that gear is separate from the body, because it just the body will flex in the middle, and it'll, as it goes down the road, of course the gears, tires will take up the shock from any potholes and things like that, but the body itself will flex in the middle if you're as you're going across the field. Now if it didn't flex independently from the stringers, the wheels, the gear would actually flex and turn, and it would just cause unnecessary stress on that running gear, because it is a separate piece. So now we're pulling it out, and you get to watch me flip this thing over in normal speed, which I thought was pretty cool. It's actually rather violent. This thing is very heavy. As a matter of fact, I have 4230, which is a 100 horsepower tractor. Could not pull this thing. I had to push it up there with a skid steer. The skid steer was getting light in the back end. That's how heavy this wagon is. And yeah, but it can take the shock of being chucked over on its side, and here it goes. I'm gonna set it there and get a different bite on the whole operation. I didn't want to just throw it over from up high. I wanted to get low because of the leverage factor, and the forks. I wasn't sure whether the forks had gone through the stringers or not. And 1, 2, 3, and boom! And of course, some people might have thought that it was going to go rolling into the house, which it didn't. Watch what you're doing. It's like the damn Terminator. Less the muscle. Gotta yell at Tim. Anyway, all right. Take that. Tim's cleaning up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Tim's cleaning up. We just got done. I'm gonna have to put another set of bolts on that thing. I just don't like the way it is. Oh, plus I have to do a little bit of welding yet. If I weld that, it'll probably be okay. What do you think?
Well, let's do it.
Well, we're gonna weld it. I'm gonna don't put the grinder away because I'm gonna grind that and then I'm gonna weld it. I'm gonna stick weld it, just a bead on either side of it. And that'll keep that thing from sliding back and forth. And, you know, not that it's gonna slide back and forth because it's tighter than hell. We used a 3/4 inch impact. But anyways, I'm gonna move to this part of the repair. Now, this has been beveled, filled, and built up on top of that. There's probably a 1/2 inch of buildup on top of that. 5/16 inch thick, all the way around the whole entire thing. This plate I did not replace because, honestly, it doesn't do anything anymore. It does nothing. The weight of the wagon is between the two wheels. Okay, so they got a tire here and a tire there. Before, when it broke, it was an inferior weld. I had no fish plate on the bottom. I had tiny little fish plates on the sides. Didn't have enough surface or grab from either side here. The farther you go away from the seam, the stronger it's going to be. And I know I've gotten guys saying, you should have made that a diamond. From there to there, to there to there. You're telling me that the welds are going to break like this. Well, you're wrong. It's not going to happen. Because before that weld breaks, I'm going to have to break this massive patch or double fish plate on the bottom side. There's a 1/2 inch of steel here. There's a 1/2 inch of steel there, so it'd have to break that before it could ever tear loose those, and it's not going to happen. I cut 5 feet out of the stringers. They used to be mounted here so that there was this much more weight, the 5 feet more weight on that. So I moved the mount from there to here, which makes that about 2.5 feet from that seam. The amount of weight that's on that seam now is far less than it was before, because now I have a full bale, a full set of 3 bales behind that that's actually going to be cantilevering up on that joint. So, I mean, it's not going to break. If I break that thing, you know what? I'll give away that tractor to the person that, you know, laughs at me the hardest, okay? And it's not going to happen because it's not going to break, and that tractor will probably be sold years before that thing lets loose. So now we're going to move on over to the stringers. Stringers, I plated them. I ground them 75% deep. I beveled them 75%. I burned in hot. I welded it in. After I butted it up, you saw what I did. And then I put fish plates on either side, and that's just, it's peachy. To me, it's peachy. It'll last. There is no weight that is carried on the stringers. I know there was some guys saying, oh, you got to build a bridge between the beam on the wagon and the stringers. Well, I don't think people understand that the stringers don't do anything as far as load bearing. All the stringer does is transfers power from the tongue to the rear wheels. So when I pull with the tractor, I'm pulling on those front wheels. Those front wheels are connected to the stringers, which then comes to the rear wheels, which is bolted to those, and then it transfers that power to there. So the only thing that could happen here is that they would pull apart, but that's not going to happen. They're not going to pull apart. There's a slight bend still from that impact where it hit the cross brace in the the runners on the wagon. So, you know, but that's not going to make any difference to me. I think it'll be just fine. So yeah, I'm just saying that this wagon is not going to fall apart. If it breaks or whatever, I mean, it lasted 18 years welded the way it was before, and the way it was welded before, it wasn't nearly as good as what it is now by about 1/100th amount of steel that is on there now. So if that is anything, it'll be 180 years before, no, it would be 1800 years before that thing breaks, but I think it'll be rotted away by then, and we don't have to worry about it because I'll be probably dust. My videos may be still up on the internet if it's a thing, unless Kim Jong-un sends one of his high-powered nuclear weapons to the United States and we melt down the world, but that's a whole nother subject. So anyway, this thing's actually almost ready to go to the field. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a 6013 rod. Some of you guys are saying, oh, 7018, 7024s. Well, it's so hard to find 7024s anymore. I mean, you really have to be in an industrial area to get those, and MIG welders pretty much did away with the need for a 7024. But this is 7018, because the 7024 is like a high, fast burning son of a gun, if I remember correctly from my high school days when I actually learned to weld. But I learned before I went to high school, so it really doesn't matter. Worst comes to worst, I'll weld an ear onto that back one, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and weld these two on and see what happens, because the worst that's going to happen is I pop a bolt. But anyways, that's the end of this. Excuse me. That's the end of this video. It's done. This series is done. I'm going to weld that, and that'll be the end of it. Mr. Tim and I will go ahead and go load it up, and you'll be able to see that. But that's it. You're done. No more. You'll never see me welding on this wagon ever again. Well, I wouldn't say that, but you're not going to see me welding on a wagon today or within the next month or so. Right, Tim? All right, come on, let's get this thing done.